And we will open the November 12th meeting of the City Commission. Jared, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Adamczyk.
Present.
Commissioner McCullough.
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt.
Here.
Commissioner Motta.
Here.
Commissioner Minton.
Here.
A quorum of 5 is met.
Thank you. Would you please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin our first work session item, the commission needs to determine if they want to allow public comment for any work session item. If so, is there a motion to allow public comment?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner McCullough has moved that we allow public comment for each work session item. Oh, sorry, hold on a second.
Oh, that's all right.
Yes, sorry. We've had a motion and a second to have public comment for each session. Can you please take the roll?
Commissioner McCullough.
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt.
Yes.
Commissioner Motta.
Yes.
Commissioner Minton.
Yes.
Mayor Adamczyk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mayor Adamczyk, I think we ought to just remind everybody in the audience that that means comments on tonight's agenda. It's not just everything.
Great, thank you. So our first item on the agenda is an overview of reinvestment housing incentive districts. We will have a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commission. This evening, we've asked just to have a few minutes of your time at the meeting to review our overview of investment housing incentive districts. Back in August, you all approved 2 policies. Those application periods opened on October 1st. Staff is currently reviewing those applications, and I've asked Community Development Director Stephanie Peterson to come before you all this evening, give a quick overview of what those policies are, as you all will be asked to provide direction at our December 3rd commission meeting. So, thank you.
Good evening, Stephanie Peterson, Director of Community Development. As Danielle said, it's a brief presentation and overview of RHID, Reinvestment Housing Incentive District. If this looks familiar, it's because I copied most of the slides that you saw in August. So hopefully we can kind of go through these quickly. Just as a reminder, here are the 2 objectives of the policies that you adopted. One for infill, which seeks to encourage housing projects that utilize existing public infrastructure, and then greenfield, that policy is for housing units that have not been, on land that have not been developed with public infrastructure. RHID captures the incremental gain in property tax for a period of up to 25 years. That increment is then the revenue that is generated by the RHID, and below are the list of eligible expenses that RHID can help to fund. There's 2 that I wanted to draw your attention to. Both are underlined at the bottom. One is that with RHID Greenfield, we can marry that with a benefit district, and we can use that revenue generated by the RHID to help pay off special assessments a little bit faster. And then the other one is vertical construction is an allowable expense under certain conditions, and this will mostly apply to infill RHIDs. I have 2 scenarios to walk through. One, and this first one, is a pay-as-you-go. That means that the developer is putting up front all of the financing, and then they are being reimbursed over time as that RHID generates revenue. So here we have a 10-lot subdivision that is currently vacant. Each of those individual lots generates about $346 a year in ad valorem or property tax. A developer comes in and they make it's going to be likely multiple millions of dollars in improvements or investment, whether that is public infrastructure, private utilities, or in even some circumstances, it could be the house or the structure itself. So that investment's made, and this developer is seeking to have $1 million of those improvements reimbursed back over time. So once those homes go up, of course, the property value increases, and so now each of those lots is generating around $6,000 a year in property tax. What the RHID does is it collects the increment, meaning it's the difference between that improved value and the base value. And so in this case, it's right here, $5,700 a year, and it takes that increment and it helps to pay back that $1 million that this developer is seeking in reimbursed of improvements for the investment they made in our community. One thing I will remind everyone of is that RHIDs are a district. So I know with benefit districts, and a lot of times as we look at development projects, we look on a kind of a lot by lot basis. But for RHID, we truly need to look at it as a district. So here I've just combined the information you saw on the previous slide. All of these lots combined, under the vacant scenario, they generate around $3,500 a year in property tax. Once those improvements are made, the total ad valorem that this district would generate a year is about $60,000. So the increment we're talking about is around $57,000. It would take, just in this scenario, it would take roughly 18 years of collecting that increment to pay back that $1 million investment. The next scenario is looking at a greenfield with a benefit district. Again, same 10-lot subdivision. This developer goes in and they put in the public infrastructure using a benefit district. And then they also then they would establish that RHID, and then those homes that have been built on these lots, again, they still have that same $6,000 property tax that they are paying, but in addition to that, because there's a benefit district, there's an additional $5,000 they're responsible for that goes directly to that public improvement. So in this case, the revenue that is going towards paying off that developer's investment is not just the ad valorem increment, but it's also the specials. So those two combined help to retire the benefit district debt. Again, this is a district, so we can't go lot by lot. Even if the values of those lots are different, or if they're generating a different amount of property tax, we still look at it collectively. And so in this scenario, with marrying the benefit district with an RHID, it typically takes about 20 years to pay off special assessments, but by adding the increment or including the increment in that payoff, this would actually pay off in 9 years. So $1 million in special assessments that would traditionally take 20 are actually paid off in 9. This is just a reminder of the RHID process. I did combine our local process with the statutory process. So items 1 and 2, that is within the policies that you adopted in August. We ask that applicants prepare a preliminary application and submit that. Staff reviews it, just make sure that it meets very basic minimum criteria, such as they own the lot or have a purchase agreement, that for RHID, that the site is properly zoned. And then the formal application, if staff determines they meet those very basic criteria, we send them an invitation to complete their formal application. We do, so the step that we have 2 formal applications actually, and 1 preliminary, and we are kind of getting ready for step 3, which Danielle alluded to would be December 3rd. So step 3 is, and this is where the statutory process starts. This is a resolution that the City Commission would pass stating that we identified there are housing needs in our community and that this project or series of projects would help to meet those needs. We use our housing market analysis as the baseline for what our housing needs are. And then that resolution is sent on to the Kansas Department of Commerce for their concurrence. Somewhere between step 3 and 4, we've recommended that we are coordinating with the county and whichever school district would be involved to make sure that they're aware of the project. They have an opportunity to ask the developer or the applicant any questions that they might have, and for really the developer to get a gauge of where the county and the school district sit. We do that because once we get to step 5, there is a lot of time and money that the developer is going to be investing in this process. There's also going to be quite a bit of time that staff would be working with the developer and bond counsel. So we want to make sure that the developer has an opportunity to say, this doesn't look like it's going to go well. We don't want to invest this type of resources, or they may choose to elect to go through the entire process. So that development plan, it will likely include a development agreement about the project. These are where all the details are going to be ironed out. What type of financing mechanism? Is this a pay-as-you-go? Is there a benefit district involved? If there's any type of performance metrics that the commission is wanting to include, this could be a time frame for how quickly units have to come online. It could be we only want homes that are between this price range. All of those details are worked out with the development plan. Once that is ironed out, and again, as I mentioned, the bond counsel will have a very heavy role in that process. Then we get to step 6, which is our second resolution. That just says that the commission is intending to establish an RHID, and it sets the time and date for a public hearing. Step 7 is the public hearing and then the ordinance that would establish the RHID. And state statute does allow for the county or the school district to veto any established RHID within 30 days. That is what I had prepared. I'll look to see if there's anything else Danielle wanted to touch on or me clarify. Nope. Okay. Did you want me to stand for questions? Okay. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Stephanie, the request that we're going to, or the people applying for the RHIDs, the developers, are we going to get those in like all of the applications for that section at once, or are we going to be getting these one at a time as people apply?
It would be rolling. So this first round, we will likely have 2 or 3 that are included, only because we can save ourselves a step if we bundle all of those in this resolution number 1 and send them to the state together. But if let's say that it's another 6 months until we get another one, we wouldn't make someone wait 6 months just to bring those forward. Does that?
It does. I was trying to think on the approving or not approving. It feels a little bit like whoever gets those in first has a potentially better chance if we're looking at all of them, if we're not looking at them all together at once. But I understand why we would do it that way. And then on number 3, the coordinating with the county and the school district, is that the city or is that the developer? Is that your
both.
office or?
We're still kind of working out some of those details, but I imagine that for sure the developer would be involved, likely community development as well as the city manager's office.
When we're talking about expenses that are reimbursable, is that kind of up to the developer to say, here's what I want to be covered and things like that? Or
Yep.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, that's a great point. So there's, and we've received some clarification from bond counsel recently. Let me add this and then I'll address your question. We have to have all 3 taxing entities on board. So let's say that the county says we're not interested, that the RHID can't move forward unless the city, the county, and the school district. They also have to participate at 100% of the increment. So one entity can't say we're only willing to forego 50% of our increment over the course of the RHID. So knowing that, what the developer will likely request is either a certain number of years that they want to receive the increment, or they may say that we want a total of $1 million, and the time frame of that will vary based on how much revenue is generated by that RHID. And that, of course, is something that the commission can provide guidance on as well. If they request a 20-year RHID, you can say, we don't feel quite comfortable with that. We would be comfortable going with 15 years. That, of course, would reduce the amount of revenue they receive. So we can approach that either way.
And the max is 20 years, right?
25.
25, okay. And is that the same for greenfield and infill?
It is.
Okay. But really the big difference is infill they can use for vertical construction.
Correct.
Versus greenfield is all the infrastructure and stuff, right?
Yeah, so the infill, the way the statute reads is there's one of 2 conditions that have to be met. One, that there has to be a benefit district already established, or the property has to be within a benefit district. The other one is that infrastructure has to be more than 10 years old. So I guess in theory, if a benefit district is already established, we could be looking at we could be looking at a request for vertical construction. My guess is most of the greenfield applications we get are going to be requesting that we pay off the specials early.
Okay, and so how do we determine if it's greenfield or infill? Like, is there a legal definition of that?
Yeah, it's whether there's public facilities already in place.
Okay.
So if the property is already served by public utilities, we're not having to expand our infrastructure, that would be infill.
Okay.
Anytime that we're adding water, sewer, street, that would be a greenfield scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie, we've talked about using this perhaps to address our workforce housing shortage. What mechanisms do we need to put in place in order to monitor the developer that, in fact, the price is being asked for rent or purchase is within our definition?
So that would be part of, when we come before you with resolution number 1, that developer will give you an overview of what they're seeking to construct under this RHID. So you could give feedback at that point to say that's a little bit above, or we're comfortable with that price range. The other thing is for ensuring that is occurs over the long term. That's something we would write into the development agreement as part of that development plan. There are certain instances that you may see there is a kind of a wide variety of price points. So you may have something that's a $200,000 home, and there's also in that same RHID a $400,000 home. What that does is that higher unit, the higher cost home, it actually helps to kind of offset and pay down that revenue or that RHID earlier because it generates more revenue. So I think that it would be probably best to evaluate those on a case-by-case basis so you can truly look at the RHID as an entirety rather than just kind of on a lot-by-lot basis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stephanie, I've got some real issues with this. You showed in your model $350,000 homes.
Oh yeah, that's just
I know,
rough
but,
value.
I mean, I thought what we asked the public and what we've talked about is workforce housing, more in the $200,000 range. And the other thing is, the ad valorem's not going to stay static. I mean, how do we figure out inflation in the, you know? And the third thing I have to say is, I really think we need to sit down with the county, because we don't want to put these people through 7 steps, and it very well could be that the county says no. They have said no to even the high V development, that whole area once, which was quite a shock to the city commission, that they didn't want to pursue that development. Luckily, they came around, and I think we got a better thing out of it. But I'm just really concerned that we're targeting this at the high end in our models, in our discussions.
So I'll first say that lot value is just a number that I picked. I could have done $250,000. It was really just to show you how this would work. So any future updates, I can reflect that.
I think a medium 200,000 would be a much more palatable number for people to look at, and because I couldn't vote for helping out people to build $350,000 homes. I mean, I think the profit margin is large enough there that they don't need the assistance from the city.
I think you said it, Stephanie, that, and I think in our discussion it was brought up, that in order to make some of these districts work, some of the houses would have to be at the higher end, because as you said, that gives a higher payback, but then we still pick up the workforce housing with the balance of the district being at the lower cost. Hence your, don't look at it lot by lot, look at the whole district. So I think we're gonna have to look at it that way, or else we won't make the economics work.
That's one of the reasons why I didn't show a $200,000 scenario, is that those, looking at it with 10 lots, those typically don't work out, where in 25 years that investment can be paid off. So to what you were saying, sometimes you may have to have a little bit higher homes in there to make the economics work. Danielle, I think you want to.
Yeah, the one other thing I just wanted to add, we do have our joint city-county meeting scheduled, and we have added this conversation to that agenda. Additionally, I did reach out to Dr. Reed at the school district and extended the invitation to him as well as the school board members to that meeting.
Thank you. We'll now receive public comment. If anyone wishes to make a comment on this item on the agenda.
Good evening, Josh Brewer. I live at 410 Fremont Street. Here in my capacity as the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity of the Northern Flint Hills. A few points on RHID that I want to state, and we've stated previously. Housing subsidies are beneficial to advancing housing in the market. They are tools that we are supportive of, and we want to see more housing that affords privileges to those that the system is currently disprivileging. Housing subsidies in general they do represent a real public cost, and they should therefore demonstrate public benefit for those populations who are currently targeted by market and policy positions. So best practice with subsidies in an inclusive framework would be to identify which populations are not currently benefiting in the policy and market conditions. What we know overwhelmingly is that extreme low income, and low moderate income households cannot afford to rent or purchase homes in this community. That is generally understood. I think there is some questions in the data about availability of housing units, suitability of housing units, but there is no question about the affordability of housing units to those populations. And we believe that as the housing need is greatest for low to moderate income households, your resolution number 1, should explicitly specify that these sort of incentives should afford privileges to those projects that are affordable to low to moderate income households. Additionally, subsidies, RHIDs, workforce housing, et cetera, should be stewarded in perpetuity using available tools to this commission, such as community land trust or deed restrictions. If we don't steward these subsidies, the subsidies that are borne by the public will be lost to the market, either as a developer windfall or as an owner windfall. So it's very important that as we are subsidizing these projects, that we think long-term, because the affordability challenge in reality is not going to be met in just one sale. That affordability is going to need to be created over several generations, several household turnovers. And that's the work of a land trust to steward that subsidy. That's the work, a little bit more bluntly, of a deed restriction to protect the public interest long-term. So I just want to reiterate that these do represent a public cost, and therefore they should create public benefit to those populations who are bearing the greatest burden of our affordability challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Mel? Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Good evening. Mel Borst, 1918 Humboldt Street. And I've lived in several of the older traditional and historic neighborhoods in town, as many of you know, and not only build up our family's home equity, fixing up single-family, duplex, triplex, and fourplex homes to live in ourselves, but also for others, and also help maintain others' homes. It is unfortunate if it's true that the city has eliminated the community development block grant for eligible homeowners to help take care of their homes. And funds like this could help with that and first-time home buyers in these established neighborhoods. How does this incentive meet the strategic guidance of Manhattan's Urban Area Comprehensive Plan goal number 4, a strong sense of place, as our planners have claimed. To maintain and enhance a strong sense of place, the land use plan guides the city to develop policies to preserve and stabilize established historic neighborhoods, including infill regulations that maintain the size, placement, and character of the neighborhood's heritage architecture. The city ignored this strategic guidance when it misrepresented massive lot coverage zoning regulation increases during the pandemic without notification of affected property owners. In so doing, the city denied property and due process rights to owners to maintain zoning protection in all established historic Manhattan neighborhoods not located in protected historic districts. This review comes at a time when we have just witnessed how the RHID incentive has further facilitated the city's attempted destruction of our community's sense of place by encouraging oversized multifamily structures into our formerly protected historic neighborhoods. The city's attempt to spot zone 300 North 11th and adjacent 1020 Leavenworth Streets in Manhattan's East Park neighborhood utilized this incentive. It also denied property and due process rights while also ignoring the land use plan's scale and placement guidance on established neighborhood infill. As such, please halt any further use of this incentive for infill until previous lot coverage and setback zoning regulations are restored to comply with our land use plan and to prevent further destruction of Manhattan's traditional historic neighborhoods. Thank you. Are there any questions I could answer?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Zach?
Zach Burton, 3651 Victory Drive with Fortress. Just here to talk about RHID Greenfield more. So this is not a conversation, at least on my part, about any infill projects related to RHID. And as it's a work session, I want to make sure, I'll make a few comments, and I'd love to answer any questions that you guys might have, because I think RHID Greenfield is significantly different than what we're looking at from an infill perspective. And really what we would like, I know it's a work session, but we'd love some feedback from you guys. Is this something you guys want to pursue, meaning RHID in general, or is it something that you really have no interest in or don't want to take the risk on? And I appreciate all of you guys having the work session just so we can have this conversation. So we have one of the applications that's currently been submitted for RHID. It's for a greenfield development on the northwest side of town. It would include 61 lots that will turn into being about 111 structures or individual structures. Many of those are duplexes. 90%, okay, to your point, Mayor Adamczyk, would be in that workforce housing range. So looking at that trade-off that you mentioned, Commissioner Mata, we can't find another solution other than doing duplexes where we could keep anywhere even near 50% in that workforce housing range and make it work. So in doing most of these projects as duplexes, or we're calling them single-family attached now, we come up with the ability really to kind of try to find a balance between both of those things. And in this project, it would be 90% workforce housing and 10% market rate housing. Also in this project, we'd have the ability to utilize a benefit district that currently the benefit districts pay off in 20 years. It would pay this benefit district off in less than 10. And so as an RHID model or a test case or something that the city wanted to use, I don't know, honestly, how we could come up with a better set of numbers where, again, we have 90% of those dwellings that are being built will fall within the workforce housing price range. And we pay that off in less than 10 years from a special assessment standpoint. It really could be like a kind of a groundbreaking project. And then just in full transparency, we don't want to spend the money it's going to take to spend with bond counsel. By doing this RHID, okay, we pocket $0. So this money is not paid to us up front. It's not paid to us for anything other than expenses that are related to the project. There's all of the expenses are related to the benefit district, with the exception of the private utility bills that would go to Evergy and Kansas Gas Service, also WTC and AT&T. So the money would be paid to them. And then the other part of that is from just a site grading standpoint. That's the only other eligible expense that there would be involved in this RHID. So again, it does not benefit us at all. Really, it benefits the consumer, who would have an increase in available workforce housing, housing stock in the community. Plus, it has the ability then to pay those specials down at a much more rapid pace. So that's kind of the project we're looking at, and we just would love to, A, answer any questions, B, hear from you whether it's something you're interested in pursuing.
Can you clarify, when you say it doesn't benefit you, you're not doing this for nonprofit, right? So you'll still make some money.
So when I say benefit us, and again, in complete transparency, if you have a lot where the special assessment only has 10 years left on it versus a lot where you'd have a special assessment with 20 years left on it, which one's more valuable? Probably the one with only 10, right? But in reality, in the marketplace, okay, in reality, that homeowner's not going to live there for 10 years. So whether or not that thing's paid off in 10 years or whether it's paid off in 20 years, it makes no difference to most people. And I know it's weird to think about it in that way, but that's the only, that would be the only perceived benefit that we possibly could receive out of this. And we're talking about $41 million. $41 million of homes that are being added to the city of Manhattan, 90% of which are in the workforce housing price range. And when we talk about resolution number 1 being signed, that's something that we would sign to.
But you don't build houses for free.
We don't build houses for free, but that has nothing to do with the RHID.
No, I'm just saying, like, if, just to be out in the open.
Sure.
You're saying it doesn't benefit you, but you do plan to make a profit from this development.
If we don't, I don't know if my time runs out here, so I don't know how many questions to answer.
I asked you a question,
I'm a
it's
little bit
fine.
concerned about that. So, yes, do we make money building houses? Yes. To Commissioner McCullough's point, we cannot build a house in the city of Manhattan in a greenfield landscape for under $350,000. And that's not us saying that, that's the market saying that. Now, can we build a townhome for less than that? Absolutely, we can do that, and we've proven that. We built 36 housing units that all fall within workforce housing with 0 incentives taken in the last 2 years. So it's not just us like putting our, just saying what we're gonna do, Commissioner Oppelt. We've actually done it and received 0 incentive for it. And I know that you've visited there and you've seen what we've done. So that's happening currently as we speak, and we didn't ask for a single dollar's worth of incentive. The other thing I would say to you is, 4 years ago, we didn't need any incentives, 0. And it would have been a criminal to take incentives. If that landscape changes in 3 years and we no longer need incentives to make some of these projects work, I'll be the first person to come to you. I'm a taxpayer. I don't want to pay higher taxes. I would never say to you that we want an incentive just to make more profit for our bottom line. We make profit on this, and we will make profit on this development, whether or not you choose to do an RHID or not. The difference will be, what's that housing stock look like? So if we have an RHID, what will happen is that you're going to see lower values on those homes. It's incentivized to the point where it makes it to where we can have workforce housing there. If we don't have an RHID, we probably go to a little bit more of a market rate housing concept. The lots are going to be the lots. It's just what we build there. And that's really where we need some, just some clarification from you guys to say, do we want to go with what the housing study says? And do we want to put forth a product that where 90% of that's going to fall within workforce housing? And I don't know. I don't know what that answer is. And to answer your question bluntly, we're going to make money either way.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Zach? Thank you.
Thank you.
Once more, if anyone else plans to speak, if we allow public comment on the remaining 3 items on the agenda, this will be at the side desk. Please sign up before approaching the podium. All right, public comment on this item is now closed. Are there any additional questions of city staff before we move forward? As this was a discussion item, no motions are needed, and we will move to item B, Lead and Copper Rule Revision Project Update, WA 2405.
Yeah, I was just saying, do we want to give any feedback of what we heard? I definitely want to move forward. I think the project we just heard is frankly one that I'd be anxious to see and see if it works out. I think we're going to have to compromise between the non-workforce and the workforce just to make the numbers work. So, yeah, I'd just like to hear what everybody else thinks. I mean, we're going to talk to the county at the next meeting. But as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the things we've been talking about for a while that we want to do. We passed an original resolution, and, you know, I'm for continuing and moving forward.
Yeah, I'm with John on that. I think the point of these are to help spur development, and if we can help make that easier and more attractive for individuals to want to continue to invest, especially in workforce housing, then I think we need to move forward. I also want to point out, I think we learned from, like with our sales tax abatement, that we may have to make some changes as we go after we get through this first round. And so might want to keep that discussion going on how we're approving these and moving forward. I already pointed out I'm a little worried that the ones we get at first we'll have a much better chance of approving those, just in not being able to compare all of them together. But I don't have a solution for how to pick and choose which ones we want to support and which ones we wouldn't.
I believe we'll be seeing 3 on December 3rd.
I just would like for us to not lose sight of the long-term protection of taxpayer dollars. So what, any kind of monitoring mechanism, or even if we do go as far as like a community land trust or something like that, or deed restrictions, I would like for that to remain in the conversation too.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we also ought to think about the fact that we could do a bit of a sliding scale on how much property tax we agree to not approve. I mean, because we will see inflation, and so if it's a fixed number for 2026, that number, then we might see the city making money back in 2032 or something like that. So, and I would just make sure we do talk to the county, because all this could be a knot.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting discussion to have of whether we do a dollar amount or a set year amount. Like you said, Karen, because if things do, jump up and it's for a certain number of years, then the developer does have the opportunity to get quite a bit more incentive. But if we do a set dollar amount, then we can pay that off early and then see that benefit earlier. So, yeah.
Stephanie, could you? No.
Yeah.
You could do both. So you could say that we want to, like a $1 million or up to 15 years, whichever comes first, so that exactly. I say that because if the revenues don't come in like we had projected, and we're stretching that out to maybe 2021 years, you at least know where where to draw that line. But then you aren't, kind of to Commissioner Opelt, to what you spoke to, you're not giving them additional revenue that you hadn't anticipated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stephanie, would you send the scoring matrix from the application to us just before we see those in the?
We did not do a scoring matrix just because there wasn't a lot of feedback with those policies when they were adopted. We do ask a series of different questions within those just to kind of give you a feel for the differences. But since we didn't get clear direction, that wasn't something that staff felt that we could go and do on our own, because it may not align with what your vision is. So I do think that over time, we can certainly craft one as you begin to kind of figure out what projects you're interested in and which ones you aren't, or certain criteria that you want us to evaluate on.
The scoring matrix is listed in the resolution that's attached, though. Just
Yes.
Okay.
So that was something that that was I think the way it was listed is maybe may include but not, it gave us a little bit of flexibility in there. So that is something that we do have some feedback for you on those.
Yeah, I did notice that there were a number of different possibilities, you know, to give 100% tax abatement for the first 5 years, and then, you know, so I think the flexibility is the word we want to look for, and as we move into this. And but I'd also like to say that we do have some money for housing, and there may be other ways that you might suggest that we could assist people in developing their housing without needing to ask the schools in the city, I mean, the county, for their sales, their property tax values. So just.
I did want to clarify there, one of the reasons we removed the scoring matrix from RHID is because we can't do a certain percentage of the increment. It has to be all or nothing.
Okay.
So that kind of, again, that's something that bond council just recently clarified with us.
Okay, because
so
I
that-
thought earlier I'd seen some of those.
We did that for IRBs, workforce housing, and RHID. For RHID, that isn't something that we're able to do because of statute.
Okay.
Anything else, commissioners? Thank you. I'm sorry, Kevin, we need to just decide if we're going to allow public comment. So, commissioners, is there a motion to allow public comment on?
Oh, do
Yes.
we have to do that for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
So moved.
Seconded.
Commissioner McCullough has moved that we allow public comment to address the lead and copper rule revision project update, WA 2405, and Commissioner Opelt has seconded. Can you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Opelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Commissioner Minton,
Yes.
Mayor Adamchak.
Yes,
Commissioner McCullough.
Yep.
Motion passes.
thank you, Kevin.
All right, good evening, Madam Mayor, City Commissioners. I wanted to take a few minutes of your time to discuss the EPA's lead and copper regulations and what the City of Manhattan has done to make sure that we comply with all the rules and regulations set forth. The EPA published a final regulatory revision to the National Primary Drinking Water Regulation for lead and copper under the authority of the Safe Drinking Water Act. Lead and copper rule revisions, also known as LCRR, are intended to provide greater protection of the public health by reducing exposure to lead and copper in our drinking water. State primacy agencies and thus required to develop and adopt state regulations that are no less stringent than the LCRR, and to develop and implement procedures for the administrator to enforce any new rule provisions prior to the anticipated LCRR. In 1991, the EPA published the initial LCR pursuant to the Safe Water Drinking Act. The LCR established an action level of 0.01 milligrams per liter for lead and 1.3 milligrams per liter for copper based on the 90th percentile level of the tap water samples. The LCR requires community water systems to collect the first straw samples at the taps in the homes or buildings that are at high risk of lead and copper contamination. The City of Manhattan has been in full compliance with the provisions of the LCR. In 1994, the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, KDHE, recommended the City of Manhattan be put on a reduced monitoring schedule once every 3 years because of historically low lead samples. Some of the important dates to remember during this process are the revised rules of December 21st, 2021, and the revised compliance date of October 16th of 2024, which we just had. Following the Flint, Michigan water crisis, the regulation required completing an initial lead service line inventory, notifying persons served by lead or galvanized requiring replacement and unknown service lines within 30 days of completing the initial inventory, publicly notifying Tier 1 of lead action levels exceedance, and systems serving more than 50,000 people must also put the inventory online as of October 16th, 2024. So as you can see by the slide here, the inventory does both the private and the city side system. That's just kind of an overview of what it would do for the water system. So what we did was review relevant information from the following sources: date of specific plumbing codes and plumbing permits, county property maps and records, distribution maps and engineered plans and construction drawings, inspection and maintenance records, meter installation records, system standard operation procedures, operation and maintenance manuals, existing water quality data, an interview with senior personnel, building inspectors, and retirees. We also did a community survey, which was sent out to the entire city of Manhattan. In 2023, the environmental compliance staff and GIS completed their reviews and verification of existing and physical material inspections. Using all inventory data collected upon at this point, there was designated to prioritize inspection locations. In the fall of 2023, interns began to do a complete physical material inspection at high priority locations. GIS staff continued to review physical material inspections, building plans, projects, as-built, customer surveys, and other data sources to inform and update the inventory. In April 2023, city staff began researching out predictive modeling companies to explore the benefits and cost savings that could be offered to the city. After meeting with KDHE, the city learned, after consulting with over 10 predictive modeling companies, that KDHE awarded the company Blue Conduit as the contractor that would help public water systems in Kansas with developing water system inventories. Blue Conduit began working with the city of Manhattan through KDHE project after it was awarded to us in February of 2024. So 150 service lines were inspected by both sides using hydro excavation, which this board approved during the City of Manhattan's 2024 LCR hydro excavation project. The project sites were recommended by Blue Conduit and reviewed by the city. The remaining inspections were conducted using a visual inspection at the meter pit, new service line excavation, or service line renewal excavation. There are approximately 17,402 service connections in the water system currently. City staff, including seasonal staff, conducted 9,100 inspections on the public side of the service line and 9,026 inspections on the private side. Blue Conduit's conclusion was that this report reaffirms that Manhattan has successfully met the requirements of the lead and copper rule, as evidenced by absence of lead service lines in the inspection samples and the strategic analysis supporting this conclusion. The findings provide a strong foundation for the utility to confidently assert the absence of lead in its service inventory. Thus, the enclosed evidence supports Manhattan's use of category level of non-lead for the remaining unknown service lines in their inventory, using statistical analysis on the basis of material classification. So these are just kind of the things that go into what was required under the LCRR. Some of the highlights that I wanted to point out to you. There's within 30 days of completing the inventory, we were to notify any lead or galvanized requiring replacement or lead service lines. We had to notify them if we found any. We had to share this information with the public, make the inventory publicly available, including a location identifier for each service line, and considering using the street address. If we serve more than 50,000 people, which we do, provide the inventory online. And if we also include instructions how to access the inventory on our customer confidence report. So we'll still be required to test lead and copper under the new LCRRs. So these are some of the tiers that would kick in if we were to have to do any additional testing. As you can see, we have regulatory timelines that will require us to update our inventory annually and to complete specialized testing for childcare and schools over the next few years. So I wanted to give you an idea of the map. So if you, this will have a link on our city website. It will go to the water quality page. Under that, you have informed customers, and that's where our inventory will lie, along with the report that was given by Blue Conduit. So if you launch the inventory, and you type in an address, you can see it'll bring up all the information regarding that. So lead category, non-lead, material, non-lead, copper, the diameter, so on and so forth. So that'll be accessible to everybody in the community of Manhattan. That's all I have for you this evening. Do you have any questions, concerns, or comments?
So you didn't check every single house in Manhattan, right?
Negative. No, they used statistical analysis to determine that based off of everything that we did inventory, they came up with the statistics that more than likely 99.9% have are non-lead.
You're speechless.
I mean,
That's a lot of
pretty much,
testing.
yeah, that's a lot.
I just wonder if maybe you could push ahead the schools, the old schools like Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, just to make sure that those kids are all okay. I mean, I don't think the new schools, would have to worry about that, but just the idea that now that we've come to understand what lead can do to people, it's amazing that anybody lived past the 18th century.
Sure.
Thank you, Kevin. Very comprehensive and glad to know that we are doing so well in that regard.
Yeah, we're done and finalized. So this will be on the website. I think Andrew's going to have a link from the main page to this landing page. And then again, everybody in the community can go look up their address and find out what they have.
Thank you
So
very much.
is it the lead soldering that makes the copper?
That's the internal plumbing.
Yeah, I mean, copper in itself isn't poison, I mean, the water going through copper,
Correct.
it's the lead.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item of the agenda?
Oh, my gosh.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gary Olds. I live at 3308 Frontier Circle. Just a curiosity question. The study was done on the public system and the lines that go from the meter to the house. If one of the lines that goes to the meter of the house is galvanized or copper or some other substance, was the homeowner notified that there's an issue or there isn't an issue? And if so, if there's an issue, who's responsible for the cost of replacing that lead flowing line? I don't mean the public system. I meant from the meter to the house, or for example, even in the house, I suppose. It's just a question with regards to that, because only 9,000 something or other. 9,700.
If we receive notification that there was lead in any one of the lines, either the service line or the city line, we would have to come up with a game plan on how those lines would be replaced. It would be up to the city to work with the homeowner on getting that line replaced. But ultimately, it would fall on the city. But that was the point, as of October 16th, if we had any lines, any anything that we could deem as lead in our service category, we would have had to notify the customer via letter.
And did you need to do that?
No, we did not need to do that.
So that means the main lines of the city is lead-free, and the 9,000, et cetera, are lead-free, which means that basically they don't have lead joints. They're solid copper, or they're solid PEX, or they're solid galvanized, I guess. That's what you're saying?
Yeah,
To the house.
there may be lead connectors at some point in time, but we would be required to replace those once they were exposed. Up until the time of not being exposed, we don't have to do a replacement.
When you say exposed, you mean found?
Mr. Olds, I would ask that you, we don't do the back and forth with the questioning. If you have any additional questions, we'll have Mr. Niles reach out to you. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other commenters, we will move on to the third item on the agenda. Before doing so, would the commission like to have public comment on item C, floodplain management plan and community rating system program annual update?
Staff respectfully request that we do allow public comment on this one. We need a public comment period.
All right.
So moved.
Seconded.
Commissioner McCullough has moved that we allow
Bill,
public comment on
Hover over the
floodplain management
PowerPoint
plan,
at the
community
bottom.
rating
Hover over
system,
PowerPoint at the bottom.
program annual update. Commissioner Opelt has seconded. Can you
That what
take
you
the
wanted?
roll, please?
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Commissioner Minton,
Yes.
Mayor Adamchak,
Yes.
Commissioner McCullough,
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Commissioners, my name is Bill Heatherman. I serve as your stormwater compliance engineer and floodplain administrator. And tonight we're going to discuss our floodplain management program and CRS updates for 2024. Floodplain management plans help us focus our efforts. It's a wide-ranging threat. There's lots of things we could do. By having plans, we can choose amongst those that are effective and work for our community. We are a member of the National Flood Insurance Program, and that's pretty foundational to everything that comes after. That's a very important program. It allows all of our residents, no matter what zone they're in, to buy flood insurance, to have flood insurance available. It also ensures our access to federal disaster assistance if there is flooding. We go above and beyond the minimum FEMA standards. We participate in a program called the Community Rating System. We follow a structured set of plans to do things that are beyond FEMA's minimum, and we're rewarded with points for that, and those points translate into discounts that consumers get on their flood insurance premiums, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works. And one of the things we get points for is coming here each year to let you know about these plans, so appreciate your participation. So tonight, we'll talk a little bit about floodplain basics, the maps and how they work, and insurance and how it works, and I'd be glad to take any questions on that. We'll visit about our mitigation plans. Those are formal documents that guide our efforts, and then we'll give you a little update on progress, both some very established programs as well as some recent highlights, and we'll also visit about some of the things that we anticipate doing in the future. We would welcome questions and feedback, and as indicated, we also ask for any public comment tonight, and we have other opportunities for public comment at any time, but if there is some tonight, we appreciate that. So floodplain basics, so backing up a step, the basic deal in the United States is that floodplain management is a partnership between the federal government and local communities. The federal government provides the mapping. They spearhead the preparation and the publication and the distribution of all of the mapping and technical information, and they also provide the insurance program. So except for a couple of exceptions with Lloyd's of London, if you're buying flood insurance, you're getting it through the federal government and you're following their program. Our part of the deal is to educate and inform consumers about the maps and what we know locally, but it is also to establish and maintain regulations. And the idea there is the federal government will help manage the risks of the past and help define the risks, but local governments need to help make sure we're growing our way
out of that by building more resiliently in the future. And so that's the basic deal. Every community that's a member of the National Flood Insurance Program has signed on, and some communities don't participate. It's not a mandatory thing, although if you want access to most forms of federal assistance, if you have a disaster, that's kind of the first thing on the checklist. And so these maps are fundamental. The easiest way to see the maps for the city of Manhattan is actually on the Riley County GIS website. There's other places you can go to find the maps, but this is by far the easiest for the city. And I'm sure many of you have gone there, but maybe you have delved deep enough to find the maps. If you go to gis.rileycountykansas.gov and you go up to the top and find the layers area, and you pick hydrology, because we're engineers and we just like that word, and then you go down and find flood hazard area, you get these very colorful maps, and there's a legend that tells you what all these colors mean. But these are the zones. These are what we use for regulatory decision making. These also have an impact on insurance. So what does this look like in our community? If you're on the western side of town where Wildcat Creek is the dominant river, you see the green. Green is actually bad. Green is the floodway. That's the highest risk and the highest level of regulation. You see red, which is what most people think of as the FEMA 100-year floodplain. You can develop and build in there, but there are standards related to the type of construction and the height that you build. And then there's yellow, which is a higher standard that we have locally adopted, where we have actually estimated the future 100-year flood risk, and we regulate that the same as if it were the existing. I say existing. These maps sometimes stay for 20 years, and it takes 5 years to get them published. So right now, if we were to say existing risk, we're talking about a snapshot in time that was 12 years ago. 2011, 2012 is when the actual studies were done. So when you're in a rapidly growing area, to be able to actually forecast into the future and regulate to that future conditions is actually quite protective. If you're in the center of the city, you see that really strong boundary of the green to the other colors. That is our levee system. That is what the Manhattan levee system gives us, is a protected zone that is our ward neighborhoods. The area in purple is called protected by levee. That's the area that would have been in the 100-year floodplain had it not been for that levee system. And the area in blue is the 500-year floodplain, which does retain that risk. Our levee system is rated for about a 300-year level of flooding. That purple and blue is non-regulatory. That's advisory. We don't have special rules. We don't require permits for floodplains. And if somebody were to go and try to buy flood insurance, they'd be getting the best rate, because as far as the official maps are concerned, they're outside the regulatory floodplain. And then if you're on the east side of the city, the Big Blue River and discharge from Tuttle Creek is far more important. We really don't have a lot of future conditions defined over there. We really only studied them in Wildcat Creek and a few tributaries along Marlatt Channel to the north. But there you see the big green. That's the discharge from Tuttle Creek. That's where it would occupy. You see area protected by levee. You see red. You see blue. But you don't see that future conditions. So that's how those maps play out in our community. But there's real maps of flooding that we have actually experienced. And the better we do with our other programs, the more we're capable of managing, handling, and recovering from these events. The 93 discharges from Tuttle Creek and the Big Blue were quite traumatic. 2011 and 2018 were quite traumatic on Wildcat Creek. And we had a close call in 2019. So these flood mitigation plans, the actual official document is called the Central Kansas Multi-Hazard, Multi-Jurisdictional Mitigation Plan. That's a mouthful. That's actually spearheaded by the county-level emergency management agencies working with the Division of KDEM, Kansas Division of Emergency Management. Those are updated every 5 years. Next year is actually the time frame for the formal renewal. The city actively participates primarily with the leadership of the fire department, and that is an all-hazard mitigation. So fires, floods, tornadoes, you name it. There's a chapter on it that discusses how we as a as a region are prepared to react. Those are also essential for disaster relief funding. So our priorities for flooding need to be listed in that plan if we're going to get certain types of federal grants in the future. So it's important to us on flooding. We've done other community studies that flow into that. Wildcat Creek flooded in 2010 and 11, and it led to the Wildcat Floodplain Management Plan adopted in 2013. And then when it happened again in 18, there was a Wildcat Resiliency effort and a subcommittee that worked for a couple of years. We also have a special plan for the Big Blue and Kansas River floodplain. That's much more focused on warning and preparation type activities. And all of these plans are available on the city's website, Know Your Flood Risk. And attached to tonight's was a kind of a nice long, I think, did I have it at 11 pages memo for you? That takes each of these plans and breaks down, by the way they were listed in the plan, a status report and where we're at. Tonight we're going to just try to hit some highlights. Established programs. One key one is that we adopt higher standards. So that future conditions floodplain, that was a local choice that this commission made and adopted in 2015, that we would regulate, when we have the information, that we would regulate to the future condition estimate the same as if that were the FEMA floodplain today. So we apply the very same regulations. If we don't have that information, there's a term called freeboard. It's just kind of how high above the official FEMA number do you go as a factor of safety. The state of Kansas minimum is 1 foot. If we don't have future conditions to guide us, we use 2 foot as the freeboard. So different ways of building in more protection to new construction or in other decisions where FEMA guidance would apply. We have some other rules, compensatory storage, dry land access routes. They're kind of technical, but they're basically trying to help preserve ability of emergency management to reach places, as well as try to maintain the behavior of the river and not fill in too aggressively. We have a rule called substantial damage and substantial improvement. That's basically if you have an event that's 50% or more the value of your house, before we can issue you a building permit, you have to actually bring your house into compliance. Or if you are in the floodplain, that's if you're in the floodplain. Or if you're in the floodplain and you just want to remodel and add on, if you're going to go more than 50% of the value, then you have to bring the entire house into compliance. That's a difficult thing to do, so effectively those rules kind of limit how much is done on floodplain homes. And we have an extra rule which is cumulative, so rather than just measuring that 50% on a one-time event, we actually are keeping track of incremental changes. And the idea is to encourage people to bring the house to the standard and over time reduce the inventory of homes that don't meet those standards. Separate from higher standards, we have a lot of warning systems. We have the turn around, don't drown signs that you might see on Anderson. We have modulated voice siren or speakers that the fire department has installed on Wildcat Creek and in the Big Blue River. And we have an awful lot of planning and preparation as far as what kind of messages would we put out, what kind of website posts would we make, social media, as well as online on Wildcat Creek. There are 3 gauging stations that during high flood events you could actually get on and see where the water is at and see how that relates to the action levels. Talked about flood insurance. I just can't emphasize enough how important having flood insurance is to the baseline. Fewer than 3% of our homes carry flood insurance, so that's 97% that it's exposed to a risk that is manageable. It's expensive, but it's a lot less expensive than actually having to recover. We do a lot of education. Residents call us and ask about their flood insurance status or floodplain status. We insure, not insurance. We talk with our insurance agents, realtors, and loan officers. We actually send a letter once a year to those last 3 and just let them know that we're available. I think most of you are aware we've done property acquisitions, floodplain buyouts, repetitive loss structures that have been actually purchased and removed using FEMA grants and local money. The most recent one was about a year ago that we completed it on Village Drive. And we do have a fairly complex one that's involving a lot of planning right now that would address an apartment complex on Wildcat Creek. We have excellent GIS professionals at both the city and the county, and so we wouldn't be able to do this work like we do if we didn't have the maps that we could make available. And we've done special studies on Wildcat Creek particularly that provide information on how we could manage Wildcat Creek in the future if we decided to pursue different options. Recent activities, the levee, that's a big deal. And we are very pleased to be done with phase 1, and we're well underway for that last piece, the phase 2 railroad gap. Regulation-wise, the Manhattan Development Code that was adopted in 2022 really advanced a lot of the overall base of planning. And then we adopted a new stormwater management criteria, which kind of guides more the day-to-day local type stormwater management decisions. So I talked about community rating system. So that is a point-based system. And we get audited every 5 years. We need to demonstrate that we've done all the things that we put in our plan that we said we would do. Our last audit was a year ago this time, and we passed. We are rated a 6, it's a 10-point scale. You start at 10 and you work your way up. I don't think there's many communities higher than a 4 in the country, and 6 puts us in one of the top 3 in Kansas. So it's a very aggressive and competitive rating, and that translates into a 20% discount for flood insurance. And just so you have an idea of what we get credit for, this was the actual point totals. And we're right in the middle of the 6 range. We have to be between 2,000 and 2,500 points. We're right around 22,000. And we get basically a lot of credit for our higher standards. We get credit for our education and outreach programs. And we just get credit for the wisdom of parks and other things being set aside in the floodplain, the amount of open space that has been preserved in the city. In the near term, we are having a stormwater and floodplain forum on November 20th. It was advertised in social media and on the City Insider. If you'd like to attend, or if you have members of the public that would like to attend, we will discuss both our floodplain programs as well as our water quality and just stormwater in general. We're always looking for opportunities to engage in public education. We've upped our social media presence with the assistance of our communications team at the city. The downtown east and west watershed management area was a big plan that was done in 2016, and we pursued some additional federal planning and pre-design activities. We haven't won yet, but we keep putting those plans together and keep pursuing federal funds. And we do have authorization to do a tenant notification program. We haven't really had the staffing to get that off the ground, but that is on our near-term priorities. And so with that, I would take any questions or discussion that you may have.
Is there a lot of confusion between flood insurance and when people have water damage? I mean, those aren't the same thing. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
There's a lot of confusion around flood insurance, and we get quite a few questions. There's a distinction between what your homeowner's insurance would pay if, like, the sanitary sewer backed up versus if it was a condition of generalized flooding. Even if you have flood insurance, there's limitations on what's covered in a basement. And most people who call and ask a question about flooding have heard some part of some rumor that's incorrect. So we spend about half the conversation just kind of backing up and trying to kind of help dispel misinformation.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing. Wildcat Creek, we've been meeting forever on that. Is there any hope of getting the retention ponds on Fort Riley, the detention ponds that we've talked about, or is that sort of a dead topic?
So as far as work on Fort Riley itself, the last official word we had, and some of this predates me in this role, but I'm just aware, was that would really not be a feasible route based on national security and the needs of Fort Riley. There is an alternate study that was done that looked at opportunities for other options in the upper watershed. there were some concerns, and at this point, that study sits as a technical document, but there's been no instruction to try to resurrect that as an actual program.
Okay.
Commissioners, any other comments?
Just thanks a lot for the presentation. It's good. Thank you.
And congratulations on maintaining such high standards.
So if there's a public comment, I guess this would be the time for that.
Our public is diminishing. Ma'am, have you signed in? Would you like to do that, please?
Apologize. I had said Bill inspired me to speak. Elaine Johannes is my name. I live at the 2500 Nutmeg Corner, which is on the corner of Butterfield and Casement Drive. And I represent the Northview Neighborhood Association. I'm a secretary there. I want to thank Bill Heatherman. We reached out to him about a month ago to ask if you would come to our neighborhood and explain the water management concerns that I know are prevalent in our part of town, also the improvements that have been made. I came here tonight just to be confused. I think this was very helpful, and we'd like to have Bill over in our part of town to explain what's happening. So I want to thank you all.
Great.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no other public comments, we'll move on to agenda item D, 2024 street maintenance update. Commissioners, do we have a motion to allow public comment?
I move we allow public comment.
Second.
We have Commissioner Minton has moved to allow public comment on item the 2024 street maintenance update. Commissioner Uphelt has seconded. Can we please call the roll?
Commissioner Minton.
Was that my name? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it sounded funny.
Sorry. Commissioner Adamchak.
Yes.
Commissioner McCullough.
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt.
Yes.
Commissioner Motta.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Brian?
I was waiting for Bob to get up and say something, but no. Well, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Brian Johnson, City Engineer. Public Works is back before you again for our second street update. If you recall, in April, we came before you and talked about the program and kind of where we were in our 7th year. We have 2 more years until that 10-year program is up, and so we're back before you this fall to kind of give you an update of what we completed this summer as far as street maintenance, some projects we have identified for next year, and then also kind of show you what our unfunded backlog is, because it seems to be growing as the years go along. There's 2 parts to this. First part is kind of this year's update. Second half, we'll talk a little bit more about financials, and I'll actually take a break between the 2 so that I can answer questions on this year's items. That way we don't get too many questions for the end. So with that, I'll get started. Again, our Part A agenda, review street maintenance completed, streets currently under construction still, review our projects scheduled for 2025, look at our 10-year maintenance completed, go back to 2014 and look through the last 10 years. Quite a bit done. I think it was close to about $30-some million total. And then we're also going to review the unfunded projects. Then when we get to Part B, we'll review our pavement condition index. Again, that was identified through our street maintenance study several years ago now, probably about 10. That pavement condition index is, we try to keep it at a 70. We're currently at a 71. Then we'll review past, present, future street maintenance funding from our 3 main funds. If you view street maintenance as kind of a stool, there's 3 legs to that stool. Street maintenance sales tax, special street and highway, which is the gas tax, and then general fund. And then we can review some options for some future maintenance funding. So this is Casement Road between Allen and Griffith. This was a mill and overlay, was completed earlier this spring. Here is Anderson between Sunset and 11th Street. Again, a mill and overlay completed this summer. There's the intersection of North Manhattan and Bluemont Anderson. As you can see, lots of things going on there, lots of chicken tracks going back and forth. Also a new bike lane there. We did do some new signal timing at that intersection also through the traffic ITS master plan, so there is some new timing there. We'll monitor it through the fall and see if our delays get shorter. But just giving everybody a heads up that we did implement some new timing there. So as you go through that intersection, please be aware. Denison Avenue between Anderson and Claflin, again, a mill and overlay done this summer in conjunction with K-State. If you recall, K-State was doing quite a bit of work at the natatorium, so we contacted them, got a schedule from them, and then waited until the natatorium was done so that their semis didn't tear up our brand new roadway. They were very kind to get done in July so we could still get done before the school year. This is Hudson in front of Amanda Arnold. This was a concrete street, full depth replacement between Claflin and Dickens. Next year you'll see we're actually going to go from Claflin down to Anderson, and then in 2026 we're going to go from Dickens to Kimball. There's going to be a large water main project that we're working with utilities with as part of that Claflin to Kimball piece, which is why that piece is going last and not first. Next year we'll go down to Anderson. This was the only subdivision we got to this year. With all the street maintenance on the arterials and collectors, we just didn't have enough revenue to get into the locals like we would like to. But Four Winds subdivision is nearly complete. It's not quite yet. We got a little bit of work to do, but it'll be completed shortly. This is Anderson Avenue from Sethchild to Wreath, or slightly west of Wreath. This is a full depth removal and replacement, full depth asphalt. This is actually almost done. It'll probably be done first part of next week. They just got some minor touch-up stuff to do, but they're getting really close on this one. If we don't have a whole lot of weather this weekend, this one will be done next week. This is Fremont Street. This again was a full rebuild replacement. Actually adds some amenities to this, some bus stops, and then some BMPs for some clean water. That's what you see in yellow. That's our catch basins to clean our stormwater runoff. This one was completed about a month ago. Went from 11th to Fremont, and there was a grant associated with this. This is Kimball and North Denison. The area to the top, this area in green is done. The purple is all done. And then the orange or the red on Kimball is done. So Kimball is open to two-way traffic east-westbound all through the day, and then on the weekends they slide the cones back and we go to 4 lanes. Been operating very well during football games. We're actually really pleased with how well the operations have been going there. They're working on this piece here now down to NBAF, and we anticipate that being done by Thanksgiving. So after Thanksgiving, and I've been communicating with USDA, DHS quite extensively, they'll go north and come up to the intersection then. It's likely that we won't have the signal in place by Thanksgiving, so they will probably have to make a right-hand turn and then go down Kimball and either come back or go back to Claflin. Then we'll start on this bluish teal and this yellow color. We are having conversations with BRI, VetMed, and Rec Services about combining a couple of those phases. We think we could save maybe 3 months on construction time if we combine those two. So there's some conversations going on. We may actually do those two as one phase yet this year. Any questions on Kimball?
I just have, is this completely funded by the city, or is there funding from K-State for this as well?
So there's multiple funding sources in this. City University funds, K-State Athletics has some funds in it. We got, close to $10 million of grants through the state of Kansas on it.
$20 million is coming from outside the city. So we had a $10 million commitment from City University over a 10-year period. We had $3 million come from athletics. We had $7 million come from Kansas grants. The remaining looks back towards the sales tax that was passed in 2020 that kicked in 2023. I think 7's right on the grants.
Yeah, it was 4 and 3.8
Yeah,
or something.
so I think
yeah.
we got 7.
Yeah,
so
7 or 8, yep.
we'll be the balance, roughly probably another 30 million on top of that 20. Brian, you thinking 50 million total?
It's been a while since I looked, but last time I looked, we were slightly under budget.
Okay, so we'll be around 30 million on the city side, and that sales tax 70% that goes towards public infrastructure. We had forecasted about 56 to 60 million dollars. So roughly about half has been targeted for North Campus Corridor.
And that traffic signal, that's been delayed in delivery, right?
Yeah, we actually contacted Valmont. So there's 2 companies in America that make traffic signals, Valmont and then a company on the East Coast. We contacted Valmont last week, and they told us they're going to ship December 1st. Now, that's the first publicly I've said that. And I was hoping you weren't going to ask, but they said they're going to ship December 1st.
Wow.
If it stays on schedule, there's a good possibility over Christmas break we'll close Kimball for a couple of days while we set that structure. It's actually built on the ground, and then a crane lifts it and sets it on the piers. So you have to actually close the roadway to do it.
Okay. And it's like a diagonal, right?
Yeah, it's a truss that runs catty corner.
Okay.
From the northwest to the southeast.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the foundations are done, all of the retaining walls, bolts, everything's built. They told us last week, December 1st, when it's shipping.
Okay.
It comes out of Mobile, Alabama, so I think it's coming probably from overseas because there's a big port there.
Yeah.
I hope they keep on schedule because that would be great news. That'd be really, really great news, actually.
Okay.
I hope I didn't just jinx myself. So again, some more completed items.
Sorry,
Go
Brian,
ahead.
this is a really small question, but a constituent asked me this week.
Yeah.
Is the median north of the stadium public property? And if so, why is K-State able to put the decorative stones there?
I can jump in, or do you want to?
It's public right of way. When we originally designed it, those were features that were in the median. We can always change them. There is a relationship with K-State to maintain a lot of the amenities within the right of way. So we're not sending city crews up to maintain these things. So it was a partnership that we entered into. But in the event the governing body decided they wanted to change some features, we could do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else on North Campus? Okay. So this one is Campus Creek, Bertrand. This was the realignment of Bertrand, Petticoat, and Campus Creek. This was part of the North Manhattan Signalization Project. This also is completed and open. This was the bigger part of that project that identified crossings at Bertrand, at Lover's Lane, and then at Vitier, and then new bike lane along the west side of North Manhattan here up to Vitier, and then it crosses. That's also complete. We don't have those signals timed yet. Well, they're timed, but they're not talking to each other. We don't have the fiber optic connected yet. Waiting for that to get done yet. That's a very specialized thing, and it's tough to get people to get here and get that done. But once that's done, all the signals actually from Old Claflin or Claflin all the way down to North Manhattan, then will be talking to each other. So the goal is that signal 1 tells signal 2, I've got 14 cars coming, they're doing 14 miles an hour, so they'll be there in 14 seconds, so keep your light green 14 seconds longer. That's how that corridor timing works.
So like, I've had times where I get stopped at Bertrand and then get stopped at Raton, and so that will try to avoid that kind of thing.
Correct. And the only thing that overrides that timing plan is when PEDs push the button, the PED call.
That's usually what makes me have to stop.
Yes. Yes.
But, yeah.
Because the light will only hold the PED for so long.
Okay.
There's a maximum time before the PED gets a walk.
Got it.
Because the longer you wait for a PED to get a walk, the more they want to just start walking.
Sure.
So there is a maximum time.
Okay. I mean, it's really, it's a lot better than
Yes.
what we previously had, so.
We've actually got a ton of compliments from students on this one. I'm really surprised at how many students have reached out and said they didn't like the bouncy balls because they always felt like they were going to get hit.
Yeah.
And we actually, the whole reason for this project was because we had several fatalities there.
Yeah.
There's multiple fatalities over the last 15 years or so.
Yeah. And the bike lanes are really nice too.
Yep.
Very nicely marked.
Any questions on this one? Okay, so city street crew maintenance. They repaired about 380 tons of asphalt, which is about a $75,000 equivalent contractor price. They poured about 1,000 cubic yards of concrete, which is about a $600,000 equivalent price. Patched 16,000 potholes since January 1st, so it was a busy year. We also had a private firm helping us patch potholes. So, summary of 2024 street contractor maintenance out of Special Street and Highway, which recall is your federal gas tax. Fremont, Hudson, West Anderson, and Juliet, so the brick project is all funded out of that this year. It comes to about $3.6 million. General fund, we didn't spend any general fund dollars this year on street maintenance. We don't anticipate spending any next year also. And then our Special Street Maintenance Fund, our sales tax fund, casement, Four Winds, and then our asphalt mill and overlay. We're out of that fund. It's about $2.1 million funded. And then again, here's your North Campus corridor in North Manhattan, where City University, Mayor.
Brian, didn't we get some money from ADA on Fremont? From,
Oh, we had multiple funding sources, yes.
yeah, I mean, but.
Stormwater, water.
It wasn't just this.
No, in total, that project was about $4 million.
Yeah.
I just counted the 400,000 or 500,000 we used out of Special Street and Highway. Yeah, we had I think there's 7 funding sources in that project. So again, here's our 2015 to 2019 contractor-only street maintenance. The fuchsia color is Special Street and Highway funded, so that's your gas tax. The green is sales tax funds. So that gives you kind of a volume of what happened between 2015 and 2019. There's 2020 to 2024. We actually had all of these on one map, and honestly, it was too busy, so we actually broke them apart, which is a good thing. That's a good story. But we actually broke these apart. So again, the fuchsia is kind of your Special Street and Highway funded, and then the green is sales tax funded. Any questions on any of those?
What, Kimball doesn't have any more fuchsia or whatever?
Yeah, we haven't funded that out of Special Street and Highway.
Okay, no, okay, this is only, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's those 2 funding sources. So these are our projects we anticipate bidding this year or first part of next year. So Houston Street, finished the 400 block of Houston, and then the alley. Denison south of Kimball. And then Anderson, this project just bid a couple of days ago. It's going to start in June of 2025. Probably, we're hoping a 26 completion. It could very well go into 27. There's 13 phases on it. I got a drawing of it here in just a second. So again, Houston Street, 2025, what we anticipate having completed. Then here's your Anderson project, which again, it's massive. Bid was $10.1 million, which actually we were 10.7. We're actually pretty happy with that number. Just a massive project, 13 phases. It's going to take a good 18 to 24 months. There's going to be lots of disruption. We did do multiple phasings because we want those detours to be real short. We didn't let the contractor tear out the entirety of one side and then take 9 months to put all their water main in and another 7 months to put all the storm sewer in. We're doing this in pieces so that those detours are as short as possible to try to reduce those impacts, especially if you live south of Anderson. There's just not a lot of great detour routes. So we did break it up into quite a few phases. Again, this probably won't start until June of next year. So over the summer, they'll get started. Street maintenance budgeted in 2025. We've got $3.35 million budgeted from Special Street Maintenance Fund. We anticipate doing Kimball between TCB and Ivy, just that real short stretch there in front of the Blue Hill Shopping Center. There's pretty bad pavement in there. It's about 1.5 blocks, 2 blocks. We're also going to do a little piece of Allen Road from TCB to the east. We're doing those two together because I have to get a permit from KDOT to do them, and I only want to pay for the permit once, so we're going to do both of those projects at the same time. That'll be next summer. Hudson Avenue, again, Anderson to Claflin, so that south leg of Hudson. And then Walters Drive from TCB to Brockman, so in front of Eisenhower. Going to do that whole stretch there between those two points next summer. And then Anderson Avenue, actually our bids came in good enough. I don't think we'll need to pull $1 million out of Special Street Maintenance Fund to help with those Special Street and highway costs, but we're not sure yet. We're still talking with finance, and we're still looking at the budget numbers. We'll be before you December 3rd to award that project, and we'll have a complete financial detail at that time. Any questions on projects for next year? Besides to do more? I would like to, actually. So this is what we have budgeted for next year, the areas we're going to be at. One more thing I do want to mention, because this is going to have a significant impact on the traveling public throughout the city. KDOT has awarded their 2 roundabout projects to the north on US 24 by Tuttle Creek Lake, the dam, and Sethchild. There'll be some minor construction this year, no traffic impacts, but starting March, April of next year, they're going to close both of those intersections, and you're not going to be able to go between them. So that traffic will now come down south on Sethchild and probably take Marlette or Kimball to get back over to TCB. So by May of next year, March, April, May of next year, Kimball and Marlette are going to be really busy, and they're going to be that way for about 18 months. Again, and you were on the commission when we came to you 18 months ago when we flipped our phasing on North Campus for this reason. So KDOT stayed on schedule and they got it bid. But that's a 18-month project that's going to have a significant impact on travel on the north side of town.
I think we talked about a temporary signal at
That's in
Sethchild
the
and
plan.
Marlette. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, Marlette and Sethchild gets a temporary signal.
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
we'll need that.
What about the impact on businesses in that area?
So there's still access to the businesses. You can go northbound on 24 and you can turn left and get into the Dares and down in that area, but you can't go through. You either have to turn left or you have to turn right. So there's 17,000, 18,000 vehicles a day that have to find another way. So it's going to be busy that way. It was actually funded 100% by a safety grant because of fatalities, as I'm sure all of you know. Several fatalities at that intersection.
I was just going to say there'll probably be a lot of increased traffic on Anderson as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to filter down Marlette, Kimball, and Anderson. Yep.
But
Any questions? Okay, so this is our unfunded need list. And I got this actually from Dan, who's our street superintendent in the back. I got this list from his crews. These are the areas where our crews spend the majority of their time. So these are the 75% of what we do are these unfunded lists, 75%. So again, unfunded full depth Oak Brook Place, Highland Ridge, total needs about 550. These are not budgeted in 25. These are just simple mills and overlays, Westwood, Venesta, Ehlers, Stag Hill, Bluemont, College. I have the PCI rating over there on the right. So you can see what that PCI number is. Total needs about 2.75 million, again, not funded. We don't have the funds next year for it. And then another list of unfunded concrete streets, Grand Champions, Browning, Grandview, finish at Grandview, Candlewood, and then North Dartmouth, about 3.5 million. So that's the list I got for my street crews. They said, Brian, if you're going to talk about anything that needs help that isn't funded, these are the ones. So that's the list I brought before you.
So what does this mean? That just we don't have it in the budget right now to.
I don't physically have the dollars to write a check for these projects.
Okay.
I would either have to borrow the money, I would have to wait till 26. I mean, if you can see, there's 3, 4, 5, there's about $6 million there That's more than we generate in a year, so you're out probably into 27. So that's our list of the worst of the worst. So with that, Part A, I'll stand for questions, or we can move to Part B.
Jamie?
I was just thinking that, so the, 3.35 million, is that what you're saying, coming out of special streets for 2025?
Yes.
Is that more than what we estimate to be brought into that fund?
Well,
for
3.35 is Special Street Maintenance Fund.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
sorry, Special Street Maintenance Fund.
That fund generates about $3 million a year.
So we're kind of dipping into those reserves.
Yeah, right now
already.
there's about $1 million and change in reserve in that. And a lot of that is because we've got a lot of bids coming up, and we want to make sure we have money in case the bids are higher than we anticipate. But 3.35 million is about what we generate in a year.
Brian, you replaced Grandview Circle, yeah.
Parts
And-
of it, yeah.
Yeah, and it was sort of extensive. I mean,
It was.
do we really need to, for an area like that pretty much is only approached by people who want to be there because it's a dead end?
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, you put in some chunks of concrete.
Yeah, and we're going to do some more with the Anderson project
at
too. You
least-
see Oakdale
Yeah.
there, a piece of Oakdale.
I'm just saying, it would seem to me that perhaps there would be sort of a lesser concrete way to do some of those that are very not heavily trafficked at all. I mean,
Sure.
and it took weeks and weeks.
Yeah. There's a couple streets up there that we are about ready to close because they're in that bad a condition. If you want to drive up there and take a look at them.
I know where you're talking.
Yeah, they're horrible. Yeah.
But those are at least on the way to something, but this
Yeah.
is just, a circle. And it just seemed like we were putting in a
Yeah.
serious street for very light traffic.
Well, we're putting back what was there. It was 6-inch concrete back in the 50s when it was built. So
Okay.
we're putting back what was there. The other alternative, which we are not big fans of, would be to try to put an inch of asphalt over the top of it. With the cracks that are in that road, that you'd be back in a year. If you made a year, you'd be lucky.
But
as the base
haven't
is
we in the
such-
past done less than 6 inches of concrete places?
No.
Okay.
6 inches is our minimum.
Okay.
Okay, so questions on Part A. Anything else? Yes.
Sorry, any of those unfunded, I mean, can we look at City University? There's not much in City University Fund that's not already allocated, but that is on the, what's the next one? That one?
Westwood, Vinesti.
The-
I don't think any of those are
No.
near campus. Either Stag Hill, no, none of them are near campus.
Any of the, yeah, there wouldn't be enough.
College Avenue, north of.
That's what,
North of Kimball.
that,
Yeah, that's that little asphalt piece north of Kimball.
But isn't that by the university fields?
It's by the fields, yeah, yeah.
and housing.
We can bring it up to the City University Committee.
We don't
That's
have that
not my
anymore.
committee.
That's us.
Okay,
We're pretty limited on funds
Yeah.
for 25. 26 you might be able to start, but the North Manhattan project is consuming a lot. And then obviously we're $500,000 a year for that
Right.
20-year period, so.
okay, pavement condition index. So this generated in 2015 from a study that we undertook in 2014 to look at the entirety of the city and to rate all of our streets 0 to 100, and then set up a model that we can use every year to generate streets that are deteriorating, and then also get our degradation curve so we can look out in the future 5, 10, 15 years and figure out where our streets are going to be. Again, 85 to 100 is good. We try to stay at 70. During the study, we did run a couple different scenarios. One was to keep the PCI at 65, another one was to bump it up to 75. The commission at that time settled on 70, and so that's what we've been budgeting for. Again, our overall pavement condition index is a 71. That's based on 2022 data. We haven't run a new scenario since the fall of 22. One of the questions I have in here is, I'd like to come back and redo that in '25, so we get another snapshot in time for our 2025 budget. So current pavement condition index rating, again, this is March of '23, it was a 70, that's our estimate based on our degradation curve. And then this is kind of our good and bad and fair and poor. So 2025 PCI update, last citywide update was in 2022. I have 2020 there, I apologize. Oh, citywide was 2020, yes. Collector and arterial program was completed in 2022. I would like to come back and do another citywide in 2025. That way we'd be on that 5-year schedule. Approximate cost of that is about $100,000, and we could use Special Street Maintenance Fund for that. The company IMS that has done our condition index ever since 2015 would be who I'd reach out to get a scope and fee to bring back before the commission if you guys are okay with that. So recommendations from the 2015 pavement study. Spend about $1 million out of general fund, about 24%. 27% would have been Special Street and Highway gas tax funds. And then about 50% out of sales tax, $2 million. I do have a note here on the upper right-hand side, $4 million in 2025 is equivalent to about 5.4 today. And that's just the CPI. That is not our construction index locally. Our local construction index is closer to 7. If you recall from April, I gave you guys an update on what the last 10 years of our construction index was, and it's running about 7%. So here's general fund, what we spent over the last 10 years, salt materials, ice, material for street crews, concrete, asphalt, all of those things. You can see as time has gone on, we've reduced our expenditures out of the general fund. Again, Special Street and Highway funding, the yellow is salt material, the blue is asphalt, concrete, all of that infrastructure stuff. Again, you can see as time has gone on, we've reduced spending out of Special Street and Highway also in order to pay more items out of Special Street and Highway and less out of the general fund. Special Street Sales Tax Fund, these are the actual revenues. To date, they've generated about $23 million. My 24 number is a little bit lower than my 23 because I don't have November and December's yet. I anticipate that being above the 23s. Total about $21.2 million in just sales tax revenue has spent on street maintenance since 2016. Then you've got close to about another $10 or $11 million in Special Street and Highway also in the last 10 years. Gets us close to that $30 million number. So current funding for 2024, 2025, street expenditures in cash. So general fund, we anticipate spending $0 out of that again. We anticipate spending $1.3 million out of gas tax, Special Street and Highway, and then about $3.0 million, $3.1 million out of sales tax. So future funding. Projects this year we're bonding with Special Street and Highway are West Anderson, Wreath to Sethchild. We have a 10-year bond on that with payments starting in 2027. And then Anderson, Harris to Connecticut. We also have a 10-year bond scheduled for that with payments starting in 2028. Again, both of those came within the budgeted numbers that we anticipated, so I don't see there being issues with those bondings. You'll know on December 3rd when we come back before you to award that project, but it was within the contingencies that we had. So with increased reliance on Special Street and Highway to fill gaps in general fund, our out-year Special Street and Highway projects and vehicles have been significantly reduced. In fact, Anderson is probably going to be the last Special Street and Highway project for 4 or 5 years. We need to make sure that that fund stays solvent, and 2028, 2029, when these payments come on board, it gets really close. So we're going to wait maybe a year or two before we assign any projects to that funding source to make sure our gas tax numbers are what we anticipate them are. We may be lucky and maybe we get more gas tax money, but we could also get less. So we're being a little bit conservative and trying to make sure that that fund stays positive. General fund street maintenance contracts committees or commodities have been cut to zero in 24 and 25. Street sales tax expires in 2026, so we have not identified any projects after 25. It does run through December 31st of 26, so depending on what our way forward is, we can either program or not program in for 26 and 27. $3 million in projects has been funded, though, in 2025, back to slide 22, through Special Street Maintenance Fund. It's about 3.1. So, in order to stay near a 70 in our PCI, let's go back to financials first. Any questions? Okay. So to stay near a 70 PCI rating, we think we need somewhere between $5 and $5.5 million per year, and that needs to be dedicated to street maintenance. Currently, sales tax is a 0.2 or 2 cents on every $100. That expires December 2026. It generates roughly 3.1 million a year, probably be 3.2 this year, but somewhere in that neighborhood. So we have about a $2 million plus or minus gap between what it's generating and where we need to get to. Again, go back to that three-legged stool. We did have $1 million out of Special Street and Highway and $1 million out of General Fund, originally targeted to fill that gap. So our options for the gap, A, we can renew the sales tax at a 0.35. The 0.2 goes away. This is not an additional 0.35 on the 0.2. This is a standalone 0.35, generate about 3.5 cents per 100, or currently about $5.25 million a year. That's about what that would generate. We can dedicate 7 mills to street maintenance, which again would generate about $5 million a year. We can reduce reliance on Special Street and Highway for materials commodities and implement some sort of combination of A and B. Or any other thoughts that we would entertain?
So with option A, that would be when we go to renew this sales tax, instead of a 2%, it would be a 0.35%.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And we can choose to put that on the ballot earlier and renew earlier. I mean, I'm looking at it, seeing that, I'm assuming, not knowing a solid funding source, like,
Creates a lot of
like
Yes.
there's going to be a big break
Yes.
in services. I don't know a better way to say that, but a big
Yes.
gap if we don't know.
Yeah, it's lost opportunity cost.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
You have a couple options there. You can put a question out to call the existing question, so this would replace it right away. So your 10-year window would start immediately, or you could put a question out there to replace the 0.2 that goes through December 31, 2026, and I ask it in advance of actually taking place.
And because it's less than 1%, is that why it's 10 years? Like, does it have to be 10 years?
No, and there's another alternative to ask a permanent sales tax
Right,
question.
that was-
This is a 10-year, it sunsets via state statute. We have currently 1% sales tax that's permanent. We can go up to 2% in a permanent sales tax, but both have to be obviously approved by the electorate.
The no sunset usually is a lot harder to get people, you know, if you tell them it'll go off in 10 years, they feel more comfortable.
I do think this, as well as the discussion on the sustainability of the whole budget, we need to look at and what we're going to do from, you know, a strategy and to get a sales tax. And I know me, for one, would like to get a sustainable budget and make sure that we can maintain it before we add any amenities into that number.
Yeah.
If you did it in the primary of 2026 and it didn't pass, you could always come back to it and.
Another bite at the apple.
Yeah.
But if it expires,
In December of 26.
Yeah, so we start at 27.
right, but there would be a year with no activity.
No.
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 Not a lot of planning going on. Yeah, you could have activity, you just wouldn't be necessarily planning for a future revenue stream.
Because I know I have a revenue stream in 26, I can plan projects in 27.
But did I misunderstand? Did you just say that nothing is planned out right now for 26?
And not in 26. We will have funds for projects in 26. We haven't identified those yet. there will be revenue for that through 26, but we can't go over in 26.
I
so
misunderstood.
It's going to be conservative. No, you're correct. You're absolutely correct.
Something internally we've talked about, and it gets to Commissioner Mata's point, 0.25 for Park and Rec expires in 2027. It's another sales tax that had a 10-year period, accomplished what it was intended to. You know, internally we're kicking around that, do you keep them separate? Do you combine them? Do you look at the overall financial approach to the city, or do you keep them separate and topic driven? I do think surveys could help you all in the event you're open to that. I think you've got a lot of survey data recently about Park and Rec and some of the amenities, but we really haven't necessarily targeted a survey for street lately. I think you get some feedback in the community survey,
Yeah, but that's been
which is
still-
usually pretty high,
Yeah.
but we haven't asked the specific question about renewing this, I don't believe, Jared. So it would be more generally just speaking, but there's a lot of conversation we need to have internally to bring you all back some options, but just those are obviously within a year of each other. We asked them back to back and they passed. Not sure we're just where the community's at in asking those back to back again.
I would think too, doing it in 2025, when there's a local election, commissioners, you could get a lot of pushback from people who don't want to spend any tax on anything, anytime, running for the job of commissioner, or just using that public format
Sounding board.
to be against it, so.
I think, because I assume we're going to have that retreat in January, I think that would be a really good thing this stuff to go over and figure out that strategy.
Absolutely.
I got one more slide. Okay. Can I get to the end? Because it does involve funding.
Yeah.
So again, back to the traffic master plan from April, where we came before you. That identified about $1 million a year for fund implementation of an ITS system. Those funding options to create that system and reduce traffic delays. One option is about a 0.05 sales tax to generate about $750 annually. Dedicate 1 mil to traffic. Now, right now, all of traffic is paid out of the general fund. Dedicate a mil to traffic delay reduction, again, about $750, or dedicate $1 million from Special Street and Highway, but again, once you pull that gas tax money out, you're going to reduce street maintenance. So you're kind of taking from one from the other because you have that three-legged stool. So that's the last slide. Summary real quick. Funding in 2025 is stable, but unfunded maintenance is needed in over a dozen street segments throughout the community. Continued reliance on Special Street and Highway to fund operations is impacting future street maintenance. Sales tax is generating about $3.1 million per year, but additional funding or greater reliance on Special Street and Highway and General Fund is needed to keep the PCI at a 70. No funding source has been identified to make any ITS or traffic improvements. General Fund, Special Street and Highway, or new sales tax are all options. To meet the needs for street maintenance and ITS, a 0.4 sales tax or 8 mils would be that combination. So there's the end, and now we can go back to questions, yes.
Yeah. So I think something that would be helpful with the funding discussion is kind of a historical look back on cost of materials. I know you mentioned like our local index is a little bit higher. If we could see that and show that, just kind of how things have gotten more expensive for us.
And when you say material, you're thinking concrete, asphalt?
I mean, everything really, because I'm
salt.
Sure labor's included in that too. Just cost of these projects. And how they've.
And some of that was back in that April presentation. There was a few slides in there that talked about concrete and asphalt.
Yeah.
And how their prices were increasing substantially.
Yeah.
Actually, and we're not seeing, I wouldn't say a reduction in that slope of that graph. I think that 7%'s staying about where we're seeing it.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping with the Anderson project, maybe we would get a little bit better pricing because it's such a large project, but that same $100 and $110 a square yard for concrete is that same number we're seeing. And we had multiple bidders.
Yeah. So I
have another round of bidding coming up. I'm hoping maybe we'll see a little bit of reduction in that graph so that we're not, maybe we're down to 6% or 5% increase instead of 7%. But as of now, that graph's staying pretty linear.
Yeah, I think that could be a helpful graph just to show like we're trying to do the same amount of work, but it's costing us
Yeah.
much more money.
Yes. So I'll update those slides then.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll wait until this round of bidding this fall is over, and I'll give you a 2025 or 2024 snapshot, okay?
Well, even historical too.
Yeah.
Like going back.
I have everything back to 2014.
Yeah. Okay, that'd be great.
Brian, are you seeing any indication from the state that the gas tax is not performing as well as it has, with people driving more efficient cars and that kind
They're
of?
driving more miles, but they're driving more efficient vehicles. So the miles driven is way up. I mean, it's way up. It's 20% higher than it was just a few years ago. The issue is the vehicles are more efficient.
Yeah.
And so you're really getting a double whammy, because you got more vehicles driving more miles, which is more abuse on the roads. But because they're more efficient, you're not getting more money to fix that. So it's really we're kind of in a bad situation with the gas tax, because you're getting a double whammy.
So we've talked about this quite a bit at the Metropolitan Planning Organization board.
Yeah.
And the state actually has implemented a fee structure for electric vehicles. So when folks go and register their electric vehicles, I think it's $300 if it's under 10,000 pounds, and it's $500 if it's over 10,000. And they've estimated that that's actually about what folks pay
In gas tax.
in gas tax.
Yes.
So it does it is at least helping a little bit, but I think there's just it's such a small percentage of the total drivers.
Did that pass this year, or is that next year?
I'm
thought
not
it was-
sure.
I thought it was going to full vote next year.
I'm not
It
sure
hasn't
about
passed
that.
yet.
I'm not sure. I'll have to ask Jared.
I know several states are doing exactly
Yeah.
that, though. They're calculating how many
They have
miles
to.
in gas
I mean-
tax.
Yeah, and they're actually looking into some pilot programs for actual mileage driven, and you pay a fee for mileage driven instead of a gas tax. So I mean, it's definitely a nationwide challenge.
It's not just Kansas.
Yeah, and folks, it's being looked at. It's just going to take a long time to adjust.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just gonna point out on the intelligent traffic ITS, is that what you called it? That's where they're talking to each other, so you're getting,
Yes, yeah.
I mean-
And most of that funding would do two things. One, it'd upgrade controllers. Two, it'd get fiber optic in the ground so those controllers can talk back and forth to each other. And then three, it'd update a lot of our signals, because a lot of our signals are pretty old. Right now, most of our data, if you haven't been down to the traffic shop, be happy to take you on a tour.
Nope, I haven't.
Most of our data coming to the traffic shop right now is through microwave, it's over air, and we're space constrained. We can't get any more data through that 650 megahertz. So we're looking to put fiber optic in the ground wherever we can to try to get some of that capacity back.
I think this one's just a hard one for me. One, because I don't understand it, because I'm not in traffic, but it feels like the extra, and when we have the like unmet needs, that one I'm struggling with a little bit. Just probably more need to talk through really the bigger impact of that, if that's something we're gonna do.
Yeah, and really the one way to look at it is all of our arterial streets are space constrained. I can't widen Fort Riley Boulevard, I can't widen Anderson, and I can't widen Kimball. I just can't, there's no room. I gotta buy houses, I gotta move people. So I have to get that corridor as efficient as possible, moving people back and forth through it. Think of a water hose, you turn your water sprinkler on, there's so much water coming out of there. It's space constrained, only so much water can go through there at one time, but if you can make the hose more efficient, you can get more water coming through that hose. So it's all about efficiency and getting as many vehicles through that corridor in a set amount of time as possible.
I mean, yeah, I think the argument would be based on the needs. I mean, we can make it crazy efficient if we,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Need, it's how much efficiency do we actually need versus the cost
Correct, yes.
of that.
Yes.
But I think
Yeah, there's all kinds of crazy things that we had a company from San Francisco come in a couple months ago and talk to us about what they're doing. And it's absolutely astounding what they can do. But as you said, there's only so much efficiency as a declining curve. You gain a lot of efficiency in the first 50%. The last 50% is much harder.
Right, absolutely. Well, and just
Yeah.
we're pretty, you know, I think we're a little spoiled on how quickly we can get around our community already, minus
Oh, totally.
minus some construction. So it's just,
Yes.
that's one of the things that's
It's
just
not
hard.
just construction, there's.
It's not, it's
Yes.
not. That's my excuse for being late to anything, is I just blame it on construction. I think overall,
I do too, but don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anyone. Actually, just blame it on Brian directly.
Yeah, most people do.
I think overall, I think John's right about having the conversation at the retreat if possible. I'm in camp of figuring out something we can get in front of people sooner rather than later, just so that we can keep planning, so we don't see
Yeah,
a gap. I can't imagine what that would be
Disruption.
like if we're waiting
yes.
and can't really get anything going.
To come to a complete stop.
Yeah, that makes me nervous about waiting
Yeah.
till November of 2026 to put something out there. I mean, to put something out there for a vote, because I wouldn't want us spending money planning projects that we don't know will exist.
That we don't
But
have.
then I also don't want to delay. So
Completely agree with you.
that's where I'm at.
I really think August would be much, not to wait till November. On the other hand, if we made people sit for 5 minutes at every stop sign, they'd be burning a lot more gas, and we'd,
Yeah, we'll look into that. As long as it's not your car. Is there anything else I can answer?
I think not. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
We're now ready for our city manager update.
Mayor, I promise I'd have you out of here by 8:09? Oh, certainly, 8:09. Time me. Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity for you all to hear those 4 topics. I know they've been very important to staff and wanting to get in front of you on those. Upcoming agenda items, as we briefly discussed, on December 3rd, you will have several incentive items on the agenda with those RHIDs and some IRB items. Also on November 26th, which is our next work session, we will be bringing forward a Parks and Recreation fee discussion, as well as the naming rights and sponsorships for Seco Park. So something for that to be looking forward to, and then we will take action on that in December as well. Legislative update. Following the election, Dick Carter, our policy advocate, did reach out to us and shared some not so rosy news heading into this legislative agenda. I appreciate you lightening the mood, because this next thing that I'm getting ready to say is not great. Just sharing with us that they are very concerned. They think that this will probably be a legislative session where we see the most significant attack on local control since the 2008-2012 timeframe. Things that we will be on the defense about will be government competition, property tax levels, economic development incentives, ability to retain a policy advocate, our county 3-mile and our county 3-mile zoning. So that's just kind of a list of things that folks are concerned about heading into our legislative session in Topeka. We are planning to meet with Mr. Carter in December to kind of start planning a strategy on how we are going to address those things as they come forward. We do have our legislative breakfast scheduled January 7th at 8:30 a.m. It's my understanding it's typically in this room, but there will be additional details as we get a little bit closer. Other upcoming meetings that we have, Good Morning Manhattan, so Thursday, November 21st. That is at 4 Points by Sheridan. The speaker is Michael Rezkala. He is the CEO of Pawnee Mental Health. We have our joint city-county meeting, as we already spoke about, on November 21st. That will be at the city. Our one item that we have is our RHIDs. And as I mentioned, we have invited the school district to that meeting as well.
Danielle, I think we also might ask what their plans are for City Park, for Seco Park, what they're looking at there, or if they've gotten anywhere, on the idea of moving the fairgrounds, or, because, they weren't happy about the rezoning, and I don't know what's going on, so.
Historically, we've struggled to put items on the agenda for the other entity, and
Well, I think this would be.
I'm just,
Yeah, no, this is, we asked them, so maybe just a discussion of,
Seco.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, if you don't think we can do that, that's,
Well, I'm giving you the history. It's no different than when they ask us to put items on.
Let us
But,
talk
yeah.
a little bit at our department director meeting tomorrow morning. I can touch base with Wyatt. I know getting an update on Seco Park is something I am interested in. I'm very excited to learn more about that. So maybe it's time to give everybody an update on Seco Park, and
Yeah.
then maybe we can ask some questions at that time. Intergovernmental Luncheon is Monday, November 25th, the Bluemont Room at the K-State Student Union. And then invitations. So we have Stepping into the Prairie, the first look reception. So that is November 14th at 5:30. This is a private event, so please send your RSVP to the city clerk's office by Friday, November 8th.
Sorry, but that's,
last Friday.
that was last week.
So if you have
So
not
it's-
RSVP'd, you cannot go. They won't let you in the door.
No,
Sorry.
I'm sure they'd be delighted to have you,
so
and
that-
it is
Coming up.
really, really exciting.
It is good. So, thank you. I'm just reading what they put in front of me, so I, gotta be careful about that. So then we also have Stepping into the Prairie, the actual ribbon cutting, which is Friday, November 15th at 9 a.m. And then No Stone Unturned ribbon cutting, which is also on Friday, November 15th. That is at 4:30 p.m. And then,
Are you all aware where they've relocated to? No Stone Unturned?
so it's 4761 Tuttle Creek Boulevard.
It's that former church that was just above the entrance to the street to go across the dam.
Danielle, isn't the Art and Light Museum have a 4 o'clock ribbon cutting?
Last
That was last Friday, okay.
Karen and I are on the same calendar. No, so then we also have the joint City of Manhattan and the Kansas State University Student Government Meeting. So that is on Thursday, November 21st at 6 p.m. That is at the K-State Student Union Courtyard, which is 918 North MLK Drive.
May I just interrupt you for 1 second to tell the commissioners that I met with the outreach person from student government last week, Bentley Talbert, and we discussed a proposed agenda for that meeting. What they would like to see is the student government pass a resolution indicating that we have certain shared values in terms of students being full community members here in Manhattan, and that we as a city commission would pass a similar resolution supporting that or indicating that as well. I'm trying to remember the 3 topics. One was community safety, and I actually saw Director Pete at the ribbon cutting last week, Karen, and he indicated a willingness to participate. Another was looking at some things like, as we talked about tonight with roads, the collaboration between the university and the city, and I apologize, I'm blanking on the 3rd item. So when I receive the agenda from them, I'll make sure you all get a copy.
So far we have.
Is that supposed to be all of us, or just the mayor, or?
So far I have RSVPs from Susan, Karen, Peter, and Jamie. So.
Yeah, because that was sent out as kind of like a survey thing to see who would come and if we were going to schedule something. So now we're saying we have scheduled something?
We have scheduled something and it will be noticed, yes.
No, well, but it said we're collecting this to see if there's interest to do it.
In the purpose of gauging interest, please
Yes.
respond, yeah.
So when is it?
Next Thursday.
So it's Thursday, November 21st
At?
6 p.m.
At the university or here?
It's at
the union.
K-State Student Union. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll make sure we send out a more formal.
Yeah,
It's in the courtyard at the union, so on the ground floor.
detail.
And they're going to have some
Just see if they can-
snack food. There'll be appetizers and beverages.
Oh, if there's food.
Yeah.
Just saying. They want to welcome us, they want us to mingle and greet the kids.
And that will, and like I mentioned, that will be noticed. The last thing I did want to talk about, Commissioner Mata mentioned the governing body retreat that we would be hosting. We are actually looking at the first couple weeks in just with calendars and the way everything was shaking out. So we'll be sending out emails asking kind of what your availability is and if there's any particular dates that we should be avoiding kind of in those first couple weeks of February. So, is there anything else for me this evening?
I would turn my mic on, but it's perfect.
I don't have nice things, Commissioner Minton.
What'd you say?
That's why we don't have nice things.
I know, that's right. Oh, thank you. Thank you. When can we expect our packet for the December 3rd? Or whatever the December date is? Is it, I mean, I hate
We will
to.
have it on Wednesday.
On Wednesday. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And certainly I know that there are a lot of topics on there. So as you are taking the opportunity to read that over the Thanksgiving holiday, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we can certainly get meetings on the calendars to talk about any questions you might have on that Monday and Tuesday heading into that conversation.
One thing I wanted to bring up, I brought it up before, but we are coming up with the appointments to the law board. And I know we've talked or expressed the interest of really trying to control that budget, which makes those appointments very important. The other thing is the appointments to that is by state statute. One of the things we did, or what we did last time, was we had all the commissioners get to the city clerk, their preferences for that board, who then gave it to the mayor, so the mayor had that beforehand. Now, if I'm reading that new system, we only have the two incumbents that have applied so far for that. And of course, we need one commissioner for it. We have two now, but we're going to go down to one. So I don't think we're going to have the same contention we had last time. Last time, the mayor kind of ignored the recommendations. That slate was turned down, and the commission put their own slate through, because with that particular board, it isn't the mayor constantly re-recommending. If they're turned down, that it just goes to the commission and they decide who they want to have on it. Again, I don't see that contention with this one. And so we do have to decide what commissioner that we want on. I've been on multiple stints. I'd be willing to do it, but I'm not going to lobby for it, so.
Would somebody be willing to like summarize Gary's concerns that he's brought forward about who's on that and what the statute is actually?
Yeah, so we've done a little bit of research into this, and I will ask Jason to jump in if I miss it, because I do not have 24 years of experience with the city and with the law board. But it's my understanding that what Mr. Olds is asking is for you all to appoint yourselves as citizens of the law board. So we alternate. Sometimes the city has 3 members and sometimes the county has 4. Sometimes the city has 4 and sometimes the county has 3. But I believe what Mr. Olds is asking for is for you all to appoint yourselves. And so we would actually have 3 or 4 members of the law board that have actually been elected by the city of Manhattan to represent that fiscal responsibility and those fiscal concerns of making sure that the budget is, being good stewards of those dollars and making sure that happens with elected officials. A little bit of the research that we have dove into and had an opportunity to look at, there has actually been a memo that has been written by the previous city attorney, Mr. Frost. Katie has also weighed into this. We also have an opinion from the AG a few years ago, which says that yes, you all are certainly within your rights, and that's certainly something that you can do. That is just a philosophy that different commissions have taken different points of view on over the course of the last several years.
Yeah, in years back, we used to do that. My first time on the commission, we did that. We appointed all commissioners, and then we had discussions and changed it around.
Thank you.
But I guess my one question is, for the law board, do we want to do that process we did last time and get the recommendations into the clerk, or just debate it out that evening, or?
I wouldn't mind if you have people in mind that you'd like to recommend. That would be helpful. And if you want that to be yourself, by all means. So. Thank you for bringing that up, John.
As commissioners, do you want those individuals to be part of the system for consideration. I say they've actually submitted their names and interest to be on the board? Or are you talking about let's throw around some names that haven't filled out the paperwork?
Obviously, everyone needs to weigh in. I think the way we did it last time was you had to submit through the system
Yes.
in order to get it on, because that's the way the rest of the commissioners could read the
Yes.
application
And you would know
tell.
they actually
Right.
qualified.
I would say, I wouldn't require a commissioner to do that.
Sure.
They can just submit their name.
Yeah.
All right, so if you have someone to recommend, please put them towards the Granicus system.
Okay. That is all I have. That is a little past 8:00.
Just as an FYI, tomorrow I will be opening the Governor's Water Conference here in Manhattan. And on Thursday, I'll be speaking to a third grade class at Amanda Arnold. Friday is the ribbon cutting for the new display at the Discovery Center, which I had an opportunity to preview today, and it is pretty cool. So, thank you all. It's 8:20. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting of November 12th, 2024?
Move to adjourn the November 12th, 2024 work session.
Second.
Commissioner Opelt has moved to adjourn. Commissioner Minton has seconded. Can you please take the roll?
Mayor Adamchak?
Yes.
Commissioner McCullough?
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt?
Yes.
Commissioner Motta?
Yes.
Commissioner Minton?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.